The sea did not care that later ages would call Vikings fearless. Before sunrise, it heaved black and merciless around a small fishing boat, as though the North itself intended to erase these men before the day could begin. In that freezing chaos, survival depended not on legend, but on a wet line, a steady grip, and the hard instinct of a father who knew this water better than he knew rest. This was the hidden truth beneath the saga. The Viking world was not held together by raiders alone, but by those who faced the cold to pull life from the sea. And when the violence of dawn gave way to pale stillness, the shoreline revealed a different kind of power. Rough boathouses, simple tools, smoke rising from a narrow timber household, and a family already awake to labor. Here, hunger ruled more faithfully than glory, and weather commanded more obedience than kings. To understand the Viking Age, you must begin here, with the men who fed it, and the sea that could kill them without remembering their names. It all began with one ordinary dawn. Morning revealed the true shape of his world. This was the far northern edge of Norway, where mountains fell into the sea, where farmland was thin, and where survival depended on what the coast was willing to give. Above the bay stood the hall of a chieftain, larger, stronger, watching over the water. Below it, scattered along the shore, were smaller homes, boathouses, drying racks, and the lives that made such power possible. Fish hanging in the wind were more than food. They were winter stored against death, labor transformed into endurance. And within one dim house by the water sat Thorstein, no hero from a carved saga, but a man worn down by salt, cold, and repetition. His hands told the story first, scarred, split, shaped by rope, wood, and sea. Beside him, his son watched and learned in silence, while his wife repaired old wool by the fire, preserving warmth as carefully as he preserved the boat. At their table, little was wasted, little was spoken, and everything depended on what the next tide would allow them to bring home alive. Inside that narrow house, the morning moved with the discipline of necessity. Torn wool was stitched again because new cloth was rare. Porridge thickened over the fire because warmth and strength had to be measured carefully. At the table, husband, wife, and son ate in near silence, not from coldness, but from the weight of a life that allowed little waste of food, time, or words. Above them, men in larger halls could command fields, yet their comfort still rested on households like this one, where labor began before sunrise. Before he stepped outside, Thorstein's hand paused on an old oar worn smooth by years of use, as though touching the memory of mornings that had come before. Then the day took hold. Fire was stirred awake, boots were pulled on, belts were tightened, bread was swallowed quickly. The boy looked toward the sea with equal parts hunger and fear. And outside, beside the waiting hull, every knot, seam, hook, and line had to be checked, because on these waters, one small mistake could become the story of a man's final day. By the time they reached the shore, the house was already behind them, and the sea had taken command of the day. Father and son pushed the boat into black water numbing around their legs, then rowed out beneath a pale sun that offered light without mercy. From above, the bay made them look almost invisible, a thin, dark shape moving across a vast northern silence. This was the first lesson every fisherman learned. The sea did not notice who you were. It only measured whether you were careful enough to return. Farther from land, Thorstein began to work. Hook, line, sinker, knot. Each movement carried the precision of something repeated across years until it became instinct. Leif watched not the horizon, but his father's hands. because skill on these waters passed from one body to another before it ever became words. Here, manhood was not declared in battle cries. It was taught in silence, in cold fingers, in balance, and in the patient art of reading life hidden beneath dark water. Behind them, the shore was already shrinking into silence. Then the line came alive. What had seemed like empty water suddenly answered with force, and in a single pull, the hidden wealth of the sea revealed itself. A cod broke through the surface in a burst of spray, thrashing across the planks as the boat pitched beneath them. There was no triumph in the struggle, only speed, control, and the practiced economy of a man who knew that food had to be secured before it could be admired. Blood, scales, salt water, and timber mixed under their feet, while other small boats worked the same harvest in silence. This was not glory. It was the labor that kept winter from becoming famine. When Leif tried the line for himself, eagerness was not enough. The sea rewarded timing, patience, and touch, not youth alone. Once again he watched his father, whose face had been shaped into something as weathered as the coast itself. On these waters, survival depended on knowledge so ordinary that history rarely named it, yet whole communities lived because men like him had mastered it. Even at sea, there was no true pause. Bread was chewed quickly, dried fish swallowed without comfort, and both father and son kept their eyes fixed on the water, as if the day might turn against them the moment they relaxed. It did. Far above the bay, the sky began to gather itself into something darker. The surface changed first, not with violence, but with subtle warning. Ripples crossing one another, wind shifting, the sea becoming strange beneath the boat. Leif sensed it before he understood it. Thorstein did too, and in that silence every fisherman knew a question returned. Take more from the sea, or leave now with enough to live? Then the answer came with the wind. The boat lurched. An oar slipped. A line fouled hard against the wood. In an instant, food became danger. Leif struggled, panic rising where skill should have been, and Thorstein saw what the sea was demanding. With one fast pull of the knife, he cut the line free. Better to lose the catch than lose the boat, or the boy with it. That lesson would remain in both of them. Then the storm struck in full. A wall of sea broke over the bow and turned the world white, drowning sky, boat, and breath in the same freezing violence. From above, the craft seemed almost absurdly small, a dark splinter twisting beneath wind and snow, while within it, father and son were reduced to the oldest instinct of all: hold fast, endure, survive. Thorstein threw his body over Leif, shielding him not only from the crashing oar and broken rhythm of the boat, but from the first true lesson the sea ever gives a boy. There are moments when skill is no longer pride, only protection. At last the bow turned shoreward, and through sleet and distance, the land reappeared like something half-remembered. On the rocks, Astrid waited with the stillness of a woman who knew that fear changed nothing. When the boat finally emerged from the gray, Leif was no longer trembling from cold alone. For the first time, he had seen how close death could come, without anger, without warning, and without ever learning his name. And the sea simply moved on. When the boat scraped onto stone, survival did not end. It simply changed its shape. Thorstein staggered ashore, on legs that no longer trusted the ground, while Astrid searched his face and the boys before she looked at the fish. That small glance revealed the order of their world. Food mattered, but only after life had returned with it. Leif could not meet her eyes. The sea had stripped something from him, and given something back in the same hour. He was still a boy, but no longer untouched by fear. And yet the day offered no room for reflection. Knives opened the catch. Steam rose from fresh flesh into the cold air. Fish were cleaned, split, lifted, and hung to dry, each movement turning danger into provision. In the distance, ships might carry the image of Viking strength across the sea, but here was the truth beneath it. Blood on the planks, salt in torn wool, hands too tired to celebrate. Even after near death, the work remained, because hunger waited longer than storms, and winter remembered every failure at the shore. That day. By evening, the house had closed once more around its living. Firelight, food, and the presence of familiar faces gave the day a shape that felt almost peaceful. Yet nothing inside that room had been earned easily. Leif watched the bandages around his father's hands and understood that this life was passed down not through stories, but through wounds, patience, and return. Nearby, Astrid lifted the best of the fish toward the rafters, storing away not merely food, but the family's chance to endure another season. Outside, the drying racks moved in the dark wind, and beyond them, other homes all along the coast guarded their own small fires against the night. That was the deeper truth of the Viking world. Kingdoms remembered raids, but survival belonged to households like these, where ordinary people met cold, hunger, and uncertainty, with labor no saga could fully contain. When dawn came again, Thorstein would walk back to the shore, and the sea would ask the same question it always had. He would answer it, as always, by going out again.